Welcome to the audio commentary. My name is Pete Ventrella, the producer of the DVD, and I'm here with two guests who I'll have introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Gary Ross.
I'm Ann Spielberg.
And we are
the writers of
the motion picture Beeg.
So we've got a rare opportunity here, thanks to Ann and Gary. We've got a special and very unique item. It's a bit of a departure from the normal audio commentary material you hear that we're going to be going to in a moment or two. Gary, can you explain a little bit more about what this material is?
What you're going to hear is some audio tapes that Ann and I made at the very beginning of this process. I had an idea for a movie with a friend at lunch one day, and Ann was my neighbor. And I went down the block one day, and I was hanging out in her apartment. And I said, I had this idea at lunch today. What do you think of this? And before I knew it,
I just got so jazzed by the idea. And we just started saying, what if? And then I grabbed the tape recorder, this micro cassette.
Did I resist?
You always resist tape recorders. You never resist having a good idea or talking about, because it just was something that kept building.
But we knew pretty quickly that day that this was going to
go someplace. Yeah.
How much of the movie do you think we had in that first session?
On the first session, I think that about 2/3 of the movie, in broad strokes, but are actually, and some specifics too, are on that tape, on the first tape.
We should probably disabuse a lot of young writers who think that it always happens this fast, because I don't think it's ever happened this fast for us since.
No, this was sort of like, a miracle.
Yeah, no, we got a little visited, and we got very lucky. And fortunately, Ann, who archives everything in boxes and chronicles them very carefully.
Well, yeah, pack rat here.
Saved these tapes.
Yes, because once we started talking about it, it became something that was becoming more real and real each day. So when we meet for lunch, I brought the tape. In fact, we just made this a point now. We just kept thinking about it and working on it before we even decided to collaborate or how we're going to.
So we either were going to have a screenplay or a very good radio show with all of these things.
Live.
And so what is on this DVD is actually very contemporaneous, spontaneous,
out of order
tapes that Ann and I made when we came up with the motion picture Beeg.
And what we've done here is, obviously for time reasons, but also we've edited it down for the highlights of the birth of this story that became Beeg. Can you guys tell us the story of how these tapes resurfaced? They were sitting in a box for many years since the writing of Beeg, but did you guys say you broke them out occasionally? And then
from time to time over the years, I guess over like every 4 or 5 years. But it's been a while. And when we knew we were going to be doing the writer's segment of the DVD, I brought them in an envelope there because I thought, look, if you need more material and we can't say it on camera, we do have these old tapes that tell us how we first got the idea. And so we played them. Actually, we turned on one and played it. It was the first time Jim Brooks had even heard of tape recording.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a very private process to us. It still kind of is. Where, it's not the easiest thing to reveal sometimes, but it was never intended. It's not as like most things you hear or see on a DVD, which are intended to let the audience in on the process. Right. These were things that we made for ourselves as a tool in the writing process. And so, unlike a lot of other stuff that, there'll be a making of or a featurette, those are always a little ginned up so that you can glimpse the process. But this really is just a pretty naked glimpse into our writing process a very, very long time ago when we were kids.
And I always found that I started taping meetings because you want to take notes of what you're saying when you have an idea and something burst out of a whole paragraph, or you're talking for 2 minutes and you realize you wrote down one word to validate those 2 minutes you don't remember. So this always had us
also
it's sort of notes, but verbal.
Also, it turned out to be a really good tool for collaboration. I mean, neither one of us had collaborated before or since, and it's something that really, really helps when two people are writing together, because so much of that is spontaneous interaction that having a tape recorder in the room allows you to get that spontaneity down instead of having to pause and is one person taking notes.
Look at Richard Nixon. He did very good with the tape
very
recorder.
Very spontaneous, exactly.
Yes.
One of the other elements of presenting these tapes is that we've kept them in the original order that they were recorded. You'll be hearing the original sequence in which these ideas were developed, it doesn't follow sequentially the picture, and that's part of the writing process, is you bounce around to different parts of the script when you're writing. Is that normally how
Yeah, I mean, I think the outline process is a nonlinear one, and you have a sense of the whole, and you're filling in the whole. I think one of the things you'll hear is that we came up with the major transitions early.
Yes.
In other words, we saw a shape of a whole story, right? A
Yes.
beginning, a
Yes.
middle, and an end. We saw the complication in the middle. We saw the way that complication would resolve. That gave us a feeling or a connection to the material.
And you'd find that one idea suddenly gave birth to something else down the line.
But I think the major skeleton of it was there.
Yes.
So now let's go to the first archival segment and hear how Big was born.
It's called When I Grow Up, and it's about an 8-year-old boy who just can't stand having to be punished. Or 10, you know, in that age group.
Or he just can't stand being a kid anymore. He wants to be a grown-up.
He wants to be the guy in charge. He wants to be the grown-up. You know, they get to do everything.
So
they get to stay up late.
he goes, I wish I was a grown-up.
I wish I was a grown-up.
And they make him a grown-up.
And he wakes up in the morning in his bed. He goes to sleep, and he wakes up in the same bed in his room.
And his legs are sticking out the end.
The bed. He goes through the bars of the thing. It's like Gulliver. Right? And like the little nightshirt that he was wearing is just like this tattered little rag.
And he tries to get dressed in the morning.
And there's no clothes. He's naked. And he doesn't, you know, like...
And none of the clothes fit. That's hysterical. So what happens is, because he's so innocent, he becomes a corporate monolith. He's so innocent that everybody just assumes he's a genius, and all of his instincts are pure, so all of his business decisions are right on the nail.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing getting in the way of him and the truth. And he catapults to the top of the corporate community.
And the way that happens is he doesn't know how to get money. He doesn't have any allowance or anything like that, and he's hungry. And he's walking down the street in like almost like a bit of a bum in this pair of clothes that he borrowed from some guy on the street. And
he runs away because he doesn't want his parents to see him as a freak, like a grown-up, right?
Yeah. And he passes by this restaurant, and sort of like comes in and sits down. He's trying to bake a meal, and there are these guys at a table having a business discussion that's like really heavy, and he sort of like stands there, and like maybe gets to the core of the matter or something.
Right.
The first order of the day is he has to go to an employment agency and get a job. And there's the interview with the employment agency guy.
That's what the other guy says. The other guy says to him, well, you really want it? Well, you know, grown-ups have to have a job, Billy. Maybe you put an angel or something like that, a genie. Grown-ups have to have a job, Billy. I could have a job.
So he goes try to get some money. He says, mister, can you give me a quarter? He says, if you're a man, go get a job. All right. And then he walks, he says, employment agency. He's a good reader.
Or you see something that goes, jobs.
So he walks and he says, I want one, you know. So anyway, he gets his job in the mailroom.
Great.
First at this major
Terrific.
corporation.
And it's like how to succeed in business.
Exactly. Works his way right up to the top.
Right.
Okay.
And he just starts catapulting up to the top.
But the thing is that he has to try to do all the little vignette things that's so wonderful that he has to deal with. I mean, he gets his own apartment.
Right.
His first apartment.
He does not have a bank account. He stuffs all his money in a coffee can or like a piggy bank.
A piggy bank.
No, it's got to be better, like a Superman bank. And he goes,
pays cash
look where
for
I hid it. Everything.
Anyway, somehow he gets this job. You know, he's like this wonderful.
Well, he moves up in the company because he says something and they start promoting him.
Very quickly.
And all of his business decisions are right on the nail, and soon... Well, I think he should rise up in the company till it's him and another vice president, like, vying for this big post.
Yeah.
And the other guy's taking, like, office stabs at him, you know, like, trying to be manipulative. But none of the manipulations work because he's a kid. He doesn't understand it. And every
the guy
time...
is very pedantic. He talks like...
And every time the guy tries to manipulate him into a situation that he assumes will be dangerous, like, yeah... He can't take the Jacoby account. The Jacoby account is death. Anybody who takes that account will be out of this company in a week. You know, you're like, why don't you take the Jacoby account? And the kid, and he takes it, and he nails it.
Next thing you know is that Mr. Jacoby and him are having ice cream in C.C. Brown.
Right. Every time the guy takes a shot at him, he turns it around to his advantage because he doesn't know what a shot's being taken at him. He just reacts instinctively.
So this woman, who is a lower vice president, or she comes to the company, she's been
a different
scouting
division,
around, and she decides this is the coattails that I really want to ride my way to the top on.
Or maybe she's really attracted to him too. Maybe there's something. Maybe on the one hand she's trying to be an operator. She sees that he's rising.
Well, she's sort of
the way we're all attracted.
She's forgotten about the finer elements
Yeah.
of herself in the race for the business.
Yes, and the way we're all
But she'll
attracted to
discover again.
exactly.
Women, you know?
The way we're all attracted to somebody who's on the rise.
Yeah.
She's attracted to this guy because he's going toward the top, and that's attractive to her. It isn't just mercenary. It
Yeah.
is a little mercenary, but it's also that she finds that attractive. That this
Yeah.
guy is so on the nail and such a meteor within the company. So this is great. So what she does is she hitches her wagon. She starts to get romantically involved in him.
We're back with Ann and Gary. Can you tell me what the importance of brainstorming is in the writing process?
Well, without a brain, you can't do anything. That's part of it.
Where does the storm come in?
Usually one, a script. I think Gary and I always loved something about a magic wind changing something. The storm is when you don't agree, and the brain is when you do agree.
I think that, it's important that you have everybody wants somebody to bounce off of. I mean, I think even when you're writing alone, you have that. And sometimes when you have nobody, you're involved in a kind of a interrogative process with yourself,
And
asking
nobody
yourself
wins on that.
questions. But here, we had somebody with whom we were very creatively in sync in the room. And a lot of spontaneity comes. I mean, the best partnerships come out of two people bringing the best out of each other and finding the happy surprise and finding a third thing that neither one could have anticipated that's better than either could have done on their own.
There is very special chemistry between our two brains. And before we had started writing, Gary and I always showed each other our material as we were writing. Nobody else, just each other. And there was just such an easy give and take of ideas that rarely really happens, and respect, which I think was the
and
prominent
have
thing.
since. I mean, Anne edited Dave when I was finished with the first draft, and I didn't know who else to turn to, and she got out her red pen and helped me with that. I mean, and vice versa. We've helped each other a lot over the years since then, and so we've always been very, very creatively in sync and excited about each other's ideas and sort of unique takes and perspective.
It takes the nervousness out of it.
Yeah, I think this is important. We're very welcoming audiences for each other. I'm a huge fan of Ann Spielberg.
And I'm a great fan of Gary Ross.
Yeah, we are, though. And we really appreciate what the other one is as a writer. And when you feel that from another person, it makes you you don't feel judged, but beyond that, it encourages you to keep coming up with stuff because you have somebody who understands you.
It's having the best of yourself brought out, and that's really a special thing. I really can't imagine ever collaborating with anybody else other than Gary. I commit this on tape right now.
No, I feel the same way.
But we never had looked to collaborate with anybody before. This just got born.
Yeah, and have not since. I mean, it's one of those things where it felt completely right to this idea, but also I think we appreciate each other. It's a safe environment. It's also pretty
fun.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a pretty exciting and electric one. We kind of get each other very sort of energized to the material and very excited about the creative process. So
and I think our emotional level sort of rises and falls to the same place.
And you can hear that on the track. You can definitely hear the excitement that somebody's having when they get an idea, and the other person is definitely playing off of that. And that's part of the fun of listening to these tracks.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things about these tracks is that we're so unjaded. I do think we're a little more jaded now. We were so young, and there's some stuff that's a little embarrassing, but it's kind of wonderful that we were just that enthusiastic back then, don't you think?
Yes, very much so. And I think that, I hate to say that there's an end of innocence, but there might be, and have been after, maybe not right after Big, but sort of moving on from that.
Absolutely.
Whether it's in your own adulthood or it's the whole system that's around at the time and what's prevalent in the air. Everything just was right.
What I get listening to these tapes is that we were very innocent young writers writing about innocence, and it's a very it was a fusion of form and content.
For people out there who are not as familiar with the writing process, can you, Anne, give me just a brief step-by-step about the different aspects of this process? We're in the brainstorming part that we're listening to now. What are the other steps you took to write this script?
Well, we committed to index cards after this. We actually went on after these tapes to basically, while we had the tape recorder on, outlining it on cards, beat by beat by beat. I think there was a total
But
of 88 cards.
we did a step outline.
Yes.
Before the cards.
That's
that was
right.
a looser
That's right.
sort of typed version, and then from that we went to cards, which we put up in my house, my office my apartment at the time.
Right, we worked out of Gary's office.
Yeah,
Gary's house, in one room with a lot of smoke.
Yeah, so those we put up, and I think that process probably from the time that we had like a step outline to the time we finalized on filing cards. How long do you think?
It was about a month.
Yeah, about a
you're
month,
right.
probably.
About a month.
Yeah.
And then from those cards, you'll go into a full draft.
Right.
Yes.
Now let's go back to the tapes, and we're going to hear how one of the major characters was developed.
I think that in the beginning of this, there should be like, I still think he should have a friend from school. You know, the one he invites to the office, like, Tommy, you'll never guess
Right,
where I
where they
am."
smoke cigars and hang around.
And he's like sworn to not say anything.
Oh, interesting, and you can
Okay.
use him.
Yes, he's got to use him and whatever.
Right,
but
right,
just
right.
think that he should be. I think both worlds have got to be represented in this in order to show that connection and keep that connection. He's, you know, a major character in this play.
No question. I think that's wonderful.
Okay, now first I was going to go back to the
To the boy coming.
his friend, and walks into the office, and he says, "Mr. So-and-so, there's somebody here who says they want to see you." And he comes and he says, "Billy? What happened to you?"
Or maybe he finds Billy and brings him there. Maybe
Yeah.
a limousine stops for Billy.
Yeah, Billy, get in the car. This is man. Mom, get in the car.
It's me.
It's me.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is not you. Oh, and they have a secret club and a secret handshake.
Yes.
You set up at the beginning,
Yeah.
and they do the secret handshake, and he goes,
Billy,
and the kid just goes, "What happened to
And he
you?"
gets in the
Maybe
office.
the third act twist. Maybe what starts to happen is he starts missing a kid. He starts missing being a kid.
Oh, I know it's what
Yeah, but he started to become a grown-up, and he
Yes.
can't go back
Yes, like all of a sudden he sees Billy, and Billy can't relate to him.
because he started
Billy
to grow
said,
up.
"You're acting weird." You know, and he said, "No, Billy, you're my friend."
Oh,
And he says, "I don't know, man." You know, it's just like, I think you're one of them now. You know, I
Yeah, so-
I can't
or
deal
just
with
something-
this. He's changing. He's
He
growing up.
can't. He's growing up, but that's not so bad. He like leaves it behind to become a grown-up.
Yeah.
So we just heard how Billy was created, the character that would become Billy. And what's kind of interesting is that you guys came up with him very organically. You needed something to happen in the script and came up with Billy to serve that function. Is that how a lot of characters in your scripts are created or developed?
Yeah, I think so. I think that characters are an expression of the story you're trying to tell, but they're actors in a drama. They're not your voice. They're playing out conflict or aspects of a story. And so often you'll find that, there's just certain things that are pretty obvious. He's going to have a best friend. I mean, that makes sense. He's not going to be an isolate. It's going to be very natural for him to have someone to talk to, for him to have a pull to his old world. It's a very natural thought process. What I think we came upon, and tell me if you agree with this,
Okay.
what I think we came upon early was that this character would represent a tug back
to the home.
Yeah.
Back to the child.
It isn't really as if the character filled the need of how's he pulled in two directions. It was that the creation of the character suggested a pull or a yearning that would happen in two directions.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that Anne and I did here that was different than a lot of other movies that were like it was instead of coming from a conceit of like a body switch, we were coming at it from a place of yearning.
Yes.
And a place of longing.
Yes, all sort of driven from character and from the heart, even though it was high concept.
Yeah.
Although Tom was, the best child man that I think I've ever seen, having Billy there reminds you sometimes, and not too obviously, I hope, that this is still a 13-year-old boy.
Yes, you see who his friend was, and there's a line, I think we even came up in the outline where he says, "Hey, and I'm 3 months older than you are, asshole."
Yes,
or,
yes.
And so it's an interesting thing. You have this movie star, this grown actor, and next to him is a 13-year-old kid who's actually a few months older than he is. And that serves as a reminder, but it also serves as a pull back to the natural order of things, back to who he really is. And that has in it kind of richer thematic material than just who's he going to talk to.
Yes. It creates the conflict in himself, too, as to whether he's going to go forward as an adult or when he finally decides to go back, why he wanted to go home.
Absolutely.
So he's serving a lot of purposes, and you're setting up the main conflict for the climax of the movie with this character as well.
Plus, it's just an obvious thing to have fun with, that he's braver than Tom's character.
Oh, yeah.
He's kind of the
He's a street
ballsier
guy.
one. Yeah, he's tougher. So he has someone who's kind of his guide in a way. You know, his Obi-Wan is 13, you know, so it's somebody who guides him through. And that becomes fun when one character physically looks so much older than the other.
That's a nice irony. There's a lot of classic moments in this script, and I wonder, when you're writing it, do you know immediately when you've written a scene that it's like, man, the audience is really going to respond to this?
Sometimes.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do. But
Yes, you
it's
do.
not all the time.
No.
It's just, something grabs your heart and you either start crying or you're laughing. You just know. Because the excitement in yourself is all there, too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think, you know, when we were done writing the 2 paragraphs of stage direction for the piano dance, we knew it was an enormous scene. And we also knew that it was something that people probably weren't going to realize in reading the script.
Yes.
And that eventually when it was shot, they'd realize kind of what it was. I mean, that was honestly, we talked about that. That was a feeling we had.
Yes.
How did you feel when we were done writing?
Really euphoric and relieved.
Uh-huh.
We knew something was going to get made for the first time.
Yes.
And we didn't know, it was 24 hours and something did happen.
Yes.
It went so fast. It was bought so fast.
But we had a fair amount of confidence, as I recall.
We did. We had a lot of confidence then. Writing this on spec, this was just for us.
I think that's very important. We both felt very free doing it because we didn't have a boss. We just wanted to kind of express ourselves and show this thing to the world. And writing it on spec for us, who'd been beginning very young, very new writers, going paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And there's a pressure in that, especially because we weren't getting paid anything. It was a very liberating thing to go, you know what? Nobody's paying us. We're doing this for us.
Yes. Yes.
And that was very satisfying. And for each other. You know, we had each other to try to please.
Right. It was good timing for hanging out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it you know, I think it made the process better.
Does it get harder once you move into writing material at studios? Does it make it a harder process, or is it just a different process?
Well, the big difference here is that we were collaborating on Beeg, and then ever since then, we both have been writing, you know, solo on our own for quite a long time. And it depends on the project, I think. It depends on whether it's an original or if it's an assignment, if it's an adaptation, if you're trying something entirely against the grain of what you've done before or not. So I don't think you can really compare this particular.
Yeah, it kind of belonged to a time in our lives when we were young, and there was kind of a reckless bravery to just saying, we're not even going to try to sell this. We're just going to go do this. And that's a kind of a brave, fun feeling. And we bolstered each other's bravery, I think, in the process.
We were happy to get a paycheck down the line. But yes, we did bolster each other's bravery quite a bit. There was really mutual support. We were each other's therapist. It was so mutually supportive that everything from there is just...
It felt very, very good. And you know, you're not always confident in what you write, but if you have a partner or someone else who can validate you, go, I love this line. That's terrific. That's great. And pick you up and bring out the best in you. You know, you're not going to have those dips. And I think I think we provided that for each other.
Yes. I remember a present you gave me for my birthday within that year, that you wrapped up in one of the pages that we had rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. So many times there were black marks, there were Post-its on. I have that still.
Do you really?
I do. It's framed.
Oh, cool.
That was the phone call home.
Oh, yeah, man. We rewrote that a lot.
Yeah.
That was a mess. Yeah. That's so funny.
Now let's go back to the archival material to hear how the classic I'm on top scene came about.
And then taking the girl home for the first time, He's invited her over for a slumber party.
Right, and she asks if she can stay overnight.
Yeah, she said, I'd really like to spend the night with you.
Or they're having dinner.
Yeah.
She goes, I think we should spend the night together. Okay, sure.
Yeah. You want to be on top or on bottom?
Yeah.
No, I want to be on the bottom, and you have to be on top.
She goes, well, all right.
I mean, like, it's so soon, we haven't even really kissed yet or anything. You're going to be on the top, and I'm on the bottom, you're not spending the night, and that's the way it is. Go on, sit in, and there's the bunk beds. You get the top. Now we'll
And
look
she
at
just
my
thinks
toys.
he's kinky.
At first. But then
Oh,
you
yeah,
see
the
this
toys.
look.
No, he says, you want to see my toys? And, like, she gives a look like he's kinky. Like she imagines, like, he's going to bring out all this paraphernalia, you know? It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like an electric train. Yeah, right. See, is there any toy? She, what do you do with that? Oh, I'll show you.
Yeah, and he winds it up and it goes around. And the thing is that there should be a moment when this look spreads over her face.
Just like she's totally into it.
Yes.
And you know what you do? You have the cut.
Over her face.
Just like she's totally into it.
Yes.
And you know what you do? You have the cut. I mean, you cut to the joke where you just have her all weird, and then you cut to later, and she's playing with the toys.
Yes.
I'm like totally into it.
And he says, I want to go to bed now.
Yeah.
Let me just finish this one.
Oh, you know how you end the scene? You know how you end the love scene? You know the way when you're a little kid and you talk at night with the lights out, and
yes.
you talk and you talk and you talk, and eventually you couldn't talk anymore, and one person was asleep, and she's just prattling the way kids prattle when they're like having a sleepover friend, you know, and they're just talking, and then eventually she's talking, and she hears him snoring in the bunk above.
Below.
Below. She hears him snoring in the bunk below, and she realizes he's asleep, and you just have a shot of her, and she smiles. Yeah, you just have her on the pillow, and she just smiles. And then the next day, you have her at work, and everybody's going, what's the matter with you?
Yeah.
She's like totally absent-minded.
Yeah, and she comes over and makes pancakes for him, and...
Oh, it's terrific. Yeah, or she's just, totally absent-minded and starts to, like, grow. She's never met a man like this in her life. Now, she has to have another real asshole suitor. His competition in the office, the one who's always trying to knife him.
Trying to undermine this guy.
Exactly.
Who
does not understand it, and she's just not into this guy anymore.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work, and he takes her to, like, the opera and or whatever it is, you know, or someplace fancy or a glitzy restaurant or a chic party, and it just doesn't work for her anymore. Because she's just not into it. She's starting to fall in love with the kid.
Can you guys talk a little bit about the endings of stories? Is that the hardest thing to come up with in your experience, and particularly in Beeg?
No.
No.
That's the easiest thing to come up with.
Yes.
Because if you've complicated the middle correctly, if you have a rich enough middle, a middle is like a question that gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it has to get answered.
Yes.
How do you feel about this?
I do. I think the middle also is the richest, but it's the hardest part of writing. You know, opening and closings. You have a rainbow. You have an arch. Mm-hmm. When you're telling a story that it's going to start from A and then go to Z. Mm-hmm. It's all the rest of the alphabet in between that's...
And if you've posed the right question in the middle, it tells you what to do in the end. If you have a problem in the ending, you probably have a problem earlier.
Right.
Because it means that you haven't properly framed the thing in a way that demands an inevitable conclusion. We ask questions in Beeg, I think, that are about innocence versus experience, childhood versus adulthood, the way you live your life, choices you make, finding the fundamental truth in you, finding what's real in you. Once you ask, and that's true for the adult character as well as Tom, once you ask those questions, it's pretty obvious he has to go home at the end.
Yes.
You know, so that's easy. What's hard, pretty obvious he has to go home at the end.
Yes.
You know, so that's easy. What's hard is framing those questions in a way which are truthful and resonant and build to a place where they demand to be answered.
I think one of the other things that's so impressive about the story is that you do hit on all of these resonant issues, but it plays as a very heartwarming comedy, and the themes are below the surface, and they come up through the action.
I think below the surface is one of the things we always said to each other, too.
Totally.
Nothing on the nail.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we were very conscious in that we never wanted to write a joke that was on top of the movie.
Right.
Any laugh that we wanted to get because it came organically out of their behavior and the situation. We never pushed a character winking at the camera who would deliver a punchline. Now, having said that, it really helps that Tom's a brilliant comedian and that he can embody this character and the comedy of the situation in a way that's truthful.
Yes, it comes out of his eyes.
Yes, but we didn't we talk about that we didn't. I mean, didn't we talk
We
about not
always
wanting to write a joke on top
We
of it?
always said, it was something we said a few times because we didn't have to say it too many times once we understood it, was never hit the nail on the head.
Yeah,
If it can't come out of the character, if
Right.
it's not generic, then it's like a big red light is flashing, and you're telling you've just lost the immersion.
totally.
Totally.
Once they feel the film, that's a great way to put it. I mean, once they feel the filmmaking, once they feel you push the comedy, once they feel you go for the laugh, even if you got the laugh, you're probably sacrificing 5 or 6 scenes behind it because it's exactly what you said. They've lost the immersion. They're not in the truth of the character now. Now they're laughing at something on top of the movie.
Yes.
And big deal. Great. You got to laugh, but you lost 15 things behind it. I mean, one of the things that happens that I think is terrible in comedy is when you get into the preview process, everybody just wants to cut the movie to the laughs. You know, as if there isn't a laugh every line, the movie's not
Something's
working.
wrong,
Yeah.
right.
What if you have 2 scenes that are serious? Why can't that? You may get a way bigger laugh 2 scenes later because you've allowed the truth of the movie to evolve without laughter.
Right. If you're trying to clock it, then
Yes.
don't go to that movie.
Exactly. And all the best comedies that I think we love, from, Billy Wilder to
Preston
Chaplin.
Sturges,
Yeah,
yeah.
Totally. Lubitsch. I mean,
Lubitsch, yes.
they all have the restraint to allow you not to laugh sometimes. Christ, even the Marx Brothers, had musical interludes.
There were scenes that we wrote that we loved, but we knew that we should not and would not use them. It's like, what did you call it? Having to kill the baby.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
terrible thing to
Faulkner.
put-
Yeah.
yes.
He said, Faulkner
Faulkner?
said, you got to kill all your darlings.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, even if you love it, if it's not, doesn't help the overall movie.
Then you got to take it out.
Yeah.
Now let's go back to some more archival material.
Billy sort of comes once a week after school or something to meet him, and everybody thinks like maybe this is a foster child.
And you
or
know what? A good,
something. And Billy all of a sudden says, you're losing it, which means he's really.
or maybe
becoming an
Billy
adult.
doesn't have that awareness. Maybe that's sort of that. Maybe that's what's going on. But Billy doesn't understand that he's losing it or becoming a sellout. Billy just can't relate to him the same way anymore.
That's got to be, I think, that the corporation is the vehicle for him to.
Oh,
have this
yeah,
thing
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
So it's got to be what happens to him on the inside. That's really
Absolutely.
the pivotal point of the
Absolutely.
film. And is he going to lose her because of it too? I mean, like, all of a sudden he says, "I know I'm an adult because now I'm thinking about these things."
Oh, that's great.
I know I'm an
That's
adult
great.
because now I have doubts. I know I'm an adult because.
Yeah, because I don't know who you are anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what's to say we can't have this guy grow up 20 years in a few months? I
Yeah.
mean, it's a bizarre premise anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe he really does start to become like an adult.
Mhm.
I mean, you really start to see the change happen a little bit. And he goes, I know I'm an adult. I'm starting to worry about you. Where were you? Where was... Oh, it's neat. It's a little dark.
He says, "Where were you?" He says, "Listen to me. I'm saying just like a grown-up." Oh my God.
I don't know if he should have the top level awareness. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think it's got to be that last struggle.
We're starting to get the plot. The
Yeah.
other guy trying to take a shot at him,
Yeah.
him rising, him becoming a computer person within the company. Yeah. The love affair with her innocence starting to come out,
Yeah.
and the love affair between the two of them, and then he starts to grow up and lose it
She
as a
had maybe
result
lost
of the love
the
affair.
child in herself.
Absolutely.
And she gets it back through him.
Absolutely. Maybe he goes back to being a kid at the end.
It's a possibility. You think on that. There's a possibility there. Unless you're saying you can't go back, but then he might, if he's an adult, he'd say, "I was gypped out of 32 years here."
And he says goodbye, and your tear-jerking ending is him saying goodbye and going back to being a kid.
Mhm.
So weird.
Oh, from the back, he's walking down the
And just
street.
like- and
He's-
the
his
clothes are
clothes
just...
start getting bigger and bigger on him because he's getting smaller.
Oh,
so his
is
arms
this
are
on?
hanging out. Yes, and he starts tripping over it, and he just takes the jacket
and he
off.
just knows what he
and takes
knows. You just gotta grow up in your own time.
Yeah,
But he had this rather unique experience.
yeah.
That was called What I Did on My Summer Vacation.
And she's like watching this. And she
And she'll
sees
always
it.
love him.
She'll always love
It's
him.
so
She
weird.
goes and tries to adopt her.
Yeah.
No. That's the sequel.
And maybe there's a whole educational process, not just sexual, that goes on, but in terms of the world. She shows him how to open a bank account. Maybe this is the death of maybe the death of his innocence is she starts explaining the way the world works to him as a grown-up.
Yeah. She becomes his personal assistant.
Yeah, or just starts, I mean, as a lover, starts helping him understand what being a grown-up is about.
Yeah.
But in so doing, they don't realize the kid is dying, and you start to see a subtle shift in him, becoming a different kind of
Gets
person.
his first T-bill.
Oh, and maybe what happens here in this part is that this is the first time. Oh, this is great. This is the first time that his competition in the office was able to take a shot at him and make it stick.
Yes.
Because he's vulnerable now, because he's a grown-up. It's the first time this
that
guy
he's
was
called in for something.
or that he's been manipulated and he doesn't know how it happened, because before he just responded purely.
Yes.
Now he's starting to think like a grown-up. And it makes him vulnerable to the other guy. I know why he goes back to being a kid. He goes back to being a kid because he's become too much of an adult.
But he also realizes that there are gaps in him that he has not caught up with yet.
Great.
Right?
Yeah.
The education and things he's got to try to
And he's missed it, and in becoming such an in becoming such an adult already, and in wanting to be an adult, he realizes that isn't what that he realizes the inside when he loses childhood and starts becoming kind of an adult and growing up that way, and then becomes vulnerable in the corporation, and he realizes that he's lost things that are very important about being a kid, and he has the insight that he doesn't want to be an adult that quick, which is what he thought he wanted at the beginning of the movie. And he makes the conscious choice. He says to the woman, "Listen, I'll always love you, but I just got to go back." And it's like they part. It's like two lovers parting. Wait. It's like two lovers parting when they separate. When one has to go abroad for some reason. Only he's going to go back to being a child. And they have this scene where he said, "Listen, I love you, but I've just got to go be who I am."
And then he looks at her and he says, "Maybe when I really grow up. Maybe when I grow up." And then he just stops it because he knows that she would be much older.
Yeah.
So it was like there's that one
It's almost
thing
like
to
time
hold on
travel.
to.
It's great, yeah.
Maybe when I really grow up. I mean, it's like, what if he was with a group of people and they're talking back about, remember when you were 16, remember this, remember that. And it's like he has this huge gap. He
that's
great. From being a child to being this 40-year-old adult, and he missed all those middle years.
And he sees what all that's about.
Even with the pain. And the
like he sees 20-year-old college kids.
And they're saying, God, am I
high
glad?
school kids.
Yeah, or people his age who are talking about those transitions, those passages in his life. And some of them say, "Boy, am I glad that I'm out of that stage," or "Boy, I'm glad."
Or wasn't that great? Or maybe they're fondly reminiscing about it.
Both.
Hey, you remember when we were there? And remember when we did this? And God, remember
college?
the
fraternity? Remember the dorm?
Or I did such and such in college. And there are all these people talking. He's just sort of sitting silent. He realizes there's so much of life.
He has no history.
And it's pain. And that what he really has to do is go through its pain and its triumphs and all of that.
Yes. But what's happening is that he was in the 6th grade before he became a grown-up, or the 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And he's 13 in the 8th grade, what do you think? Maybe younger.
Yeah, around that,
okay. And his class is going to graduate.
Great.
And he wants to graduate. I mean, that's a big decision.
So the decision that comes at the end is that it's a choice between graduating from 6th grade or assuming the presidency of the corporation, and he realizes he's losing the kid in him, and that he doesn't want to lose that time. He wants to go back and grow up naturally.
He wants to grow up and experience it all.
And he's, of course, given her the child in her again, which she never had.
Yeah.
She may have showed him about adulthood, but he's given her a chance to discover the child that she never had because she was such an officious corporate executive and just wanted to get ahead of her whole life.
Yes.
And so what happens is, toward the end of the movie,
he disappears the day that they're going to maybe bring him into the corporation. And she's like anxious, where is he? She goes to his house and he's not there. And she finally sees him standing outside of the fence, looking into the playground.
Or maybe she helps him get away. Maybe she takes him back to the school. Go ahead. Okay, where were we? Okay, so we're saying about how he decides at that last moment that he wants to be a kid, that he wants to graduate with the 6th grade instead of assuming the presidency. And however he gets there, the last shot is him turning from an adult into a kid with these baggy clothes. And what you were saying is that he'd had everybody been looking for him. His parents were looking for him, the cops and the FBI and everybody, and they were going to give a special plaque at the graduation for the first student
about him.
And he walks in from the back of the hall to graduate from the 6th grade. And they're talking about what a wonderful student he was and all this sort of stuff.
As he's walking in, maybe that's when he starts shrinking. He's an adult in the back of the room, like he sort of like ran in there, so out of breath.
Maybe he starts shrinking across the playground, and by the time he gets in, we see the shot on the door of this kid just in this baggy adult business suit.
Yeah.
With these shoes that are too big. You know, flopping around. And he walks up and everybody's amazed. And she comes in the back of the room. She shows up after he starts to accept the diploma and give a speech or whatever it is he does.
So Gary and Ann, once you find out a particular actor is cast in a role, such as Tom for Josh, do you do a lot of rewriting to tailor the script to the actor, or you can mention any of the actors in this movie?
No, I don't think so. Not in this.
Not here. I mean, I think that sometimes you'll rewrite a character, like we made Macmillan a little more real as time went on,
Yes,
and less
he was
of a
little,
happy clown.
Right, less roly-poly.
But, yes, more of a... And I think a lot of that was sort of Jim's influence. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing that he brought was creating a sense of reality in that character, too. But not really. I mean, Tom fit wonderfully with the character, and that was terrific, you know. I don't recall us... I mean, for a while when Robert De Niro was going to play the part, that required a lot of rewriting.
That did. That was, especially at the beginning when Josh was still young, was gearing the character to someone who would be De Niro when he grew up. So it got a little bit darker. It got a little more urban than suburban, naturalistic.
Yeah, totally. Urban. Yeah, absolutely.
How about the aspect of having some personal connection to a story? Do you think that's something that's necessary when you write a script, or should your imagination fill any gaps?
Depends on what you're writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that it's personal connection. I think you always need some personal connection, but that doesn't mean it's autobiographical. In other words, it doesn't mean it had to happen to you, but it means that you have to be able to relate to some aspect of it. I mean, Ann and I could write a perfectly good script about ancient Rome. I mean, it would be hard for us to transpose everything, but...
in Latin, too.
Yeah, it would be especially hard to write it in the original. But we could find things in the characters that we related to. It doesn't mean that it's out of our own experience.
It's like I've never played stickball.
Yeah, but you understand. But you understand incredibly well the dynamics of those characters on that stickball court, and so you write the scene well.
Okay, now let's go to the next archival section where we'll hear about the character of Susan, as well as the seeds of another classic scene.
Well, she's a ballsy. I think she has to be.
Yeah, but it should be a woman who has worked her sexual wiles in the company, because that's one of the things she gets.
An appeal. I mean, that's
but that's one of the things she gets rid of. She should be a very sexual woman who has always used this. Yeah. You know how I see her?
But a corporate man, because she's had to be playing.
Exactly. I'll tell you how
she's not a bimbo. She walks over the first time she comes to his house. Mm-hmm. She's coming over with a bottle of wine and a hamper with pâté and a little caviar. I mean, just the real pseudo.
And by the end, they're going out and
he hates fishing.
Yeah.
And a little caviar. I mean, just the real pseudo.
And by the end, they're going out and
he hates fishing.
Yeah. By the end, they're just going out and they're eating hamburgers
with
and
peanut butter on them.
Oh, yeah. She thinks, okay, well, maybe he was just a little eccentric, but she makes plans again. Where will we go? Will we go to dinner? Will we go to such and such a place for dinner? And he wants to go like race the bumper cars and stuff like that.
Because she picked him up in a limo, and he's pressing every button in this thing.
Great, and he thinks it's the coolest
she's trying to like rub the back of his neck, right? And he's like racing the thing and closing and opening the sunroof and closing and standing up in the back and sticking his head through.
Is that hysterical?
Wow, I always wanted to ride him on these.
She came in evening dress, right? Because she thought they were going out fancy.
She has the high heels and stumbling after this guy who's like going through. He walks through mud puddles, not around them.
Oh.
You know, he doesn't care. He's a kid.
Yes, right.
He's a kid.
Right.
He walks in the mud.
Right. And like he gets like all the great 70s, like he gets antsy at a French movie. He doesn't want to go. I'd be like, yeah.
He rubs the back of his neck. He's ticklish as hell.
Yeah, right.
He just double. Stop it.
And like he hits her. Yeah. Just like punches her in the arm, you know? What did you do? I was like, get out! And like after a while, she's getting into it too. She's putting a frog in his bed. I mean, he's this grown-up career, corporate executive, like doing this kind of stuff, you know?
So we're back with Ann and Gary. With the piano scene. Is it true that they just took a cardboard cutout of a piano home and that Tom and Robert came up with this whole routine themselves in terms of how they were going to do it? Have you heard
No,
anything?
well, they did not come up with the whole routine themselves. I mean, it's very specific in the script, and there's only one way to play Heart and Soul on the piano. So, I mean, they rehearsed a lot. I mean, it's probably more specific in terms of its blocking than any scene we've ever written before or since, because your feet can only go very specific places. But they did take home the cardboard cutout and rehearse on it. And the interesting thing is that we had dance doubles on the set that day, and they were able to perform it better than the dance doubles because they'd rehearsed so much. And it's actually their feet in the insert when it was supposed to be the dance double.
It's pretty excruciatingly physical. There's some giant leaps there, especially on chopsticks.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah,
One giant leap for
you tried
Robert
jumping
Loggia.
Yeah, right. It's very hard to jump an octave.
But it still comes out very spontaneously, the whole scene and the way that they relate to each other, which I think really
it's
works.
so funny. I mean, we've had that question a lot over the years. Did they just come up with it? Something like this requires months of preparation.
Including building.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd like to have you guys comment on is during the brainstorming section we just heard, you bring up the whole pate fish eggs bit, but it's part of another scene that you're thinking of. It's almost a throwaway idea, and yet it becomes central to the whole scene where Tom eats the mini corn and the business dinner scene. Does that happen a lot, and did it happen a lot in this script where you'd have little throwaway ideas you'd file away and bring back that would become bigger?
It was more in the brainstorming than once we got down to writing the script, we stuck with the draft, the outline that we had prepared. Occasionally we'd find that something wasn't working and we would either find that we had to cut it or get a substitute. But
that happened with the piano scene because didn't you have an idea of the piano that people would step on and it would play, but you couldn't find a scene where it would go in, and you kind of filed it away, and later on it just happened to be needed.
But it was a great icebreaker. It's a nice way to meet people.
It's, I think that this happens all the time. It's not, anybody who writes knows that these ideas in the outline process are pretty fungible. They're going to move around, and you're going to have, this could work here, it could work there, or, oh, this idea that I had for that scene, that might work more interestingly over here. I mean, that's just normal. That's just a normal part of the writing process. I've never written a script where that didn't happen, where things move around a lot and things like that. In terms of the piano dance, yeah, Anne had seen this thing in New York. She came back and was incredibly thrilled about it. It's true, we could not find an appropriate way to use it for a long time. And then suddenly, and this is a great example of what you're talking about, suddenly a need presented itself in the movie for these two characters to connect, and in our gun belt we had this piano.
Yes, it was like we needed a way to cut through everything. How would a grown man and a young boy connect? How would he get promoted in a company? How does a guy see him in the first place?
And what organically that turns into is a duet, because they have to communicate, and the duet instantly suggests Heart and Soul.
Yes.
And then suddenly you have a scene that's rich and resonant, but it grew out of that logical thought process and out of the need of the characters connecting.
Yes, and also the need of Macmillan. He was able to relate to Josh so well. He had the piano lessons himself every day after school.
Right. And the physicality of it let them connect. So it does, I think part of the joy of the scene is the number, but the other part of the joy of the scene is seeing what is a big transition in the movie, seeing him connect with his boss, seeing what is a big transition in the movie, seeing him connect with his boss, seeing the interaction they have, seeing his boss reclaim his own interaction they have, seeing his boss reclaim his own childhood through Josh. There's a lot going on between those characters in that dance number that isn't just a dance number.
No, it's a giant leap, once again.
Yeah.
It's a big leap because from there, the love interest starts to turn a corner. Josh turns a corner once he's promoted. And that was really the diving board.
Exactly. Yeah, it becomes a big deal in the movie. And so
we were thinking a lot of different ways to get Mac and Josh to connect, to turn that around. And it wasn't easy. Yeah. That's when we remembered the piano, though. Then suddenly it was this.
Exactly.
Now let's return to the archival material for a section where Ann and Gary discuss ways to get Josh into the corporate world.
I don't feel that, first of all, jumping into the corporation very, very quickly and keeping on the corporate world, even though they're all reacting off of his childishness.
I think it gives you a great arena to play off of. It's the symbol of adulthood. And the thing about this is it's a fish out of water story. It's like Connecticut Yankee. You take a guy from the 20th century, you throw him in King Arthur's kingdom. It's a situation in which you take a kid and you throw him into an adult world. That's where I think the humor is. And I don't think we should be afraid to realize that that's the framework we're operating within. That's what gives us so many wonderful, opportunities. I think the hard problem to solve is how do you get involved in the company? Is there somebody who takes care of him so that he can get a job in computers,
He's great at computers, home computer. A 12-year-old can run a computer better than most people. He could get a job working the computers because there are 12-year-old kids that are computer geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
They've grown up on them. They speak the language. And we open it up with him playing with his home computer at home. Like taking it apart through different programs. He knows everything about computers. So it's like he's able to move into this company and just get a job and earn real money.
Or what if it's video games?
The company's video games, you mean?
Yeah. It's like Atari. It's like big corporation. And like this, he has like best
great,
ideas
because it's
in
for
the
a
world.
kid.
Yeah.
So you guys wrote in a number of locations when you were brainstorming and outlining and all that. What we're going to be hearing now, you can hear a lot of ambience in the background. Can you tell us where you were, and was there some sort of writing routine that you would have, that you'd go to this place all the time?
We got hungry. And we just brought the tape recorder every place we happened to be. Instead of working at home, at Gary's home, we'd say, let's go to eat lunch. And I don't think I should mention names because other delis would get upset. I don't know.
We were in a delicatessen.
Yes.
And that's the clinking and clattering that you hear.
And the chewing.
Right.
And it wasn't distracting to be writing or brainstorming in this crowded environment?
Well, we weren't writing then. We were just still having the whole creative, we were still coming up with the whole story here.
Yeah, and also I think that you want to make it fun, right?
Yeah, you want to make it fun, but this was fun.
Exactly.
Before we even committed to sitting down and writing it. I mean, we had committed to it, but before that even began.
Right.
It's really the loose part. It's really like, all your limbs are just sort of loose and you're walking up to the starting place.
Is writing environment important at all, to you guys in the process? Because the other thing I heard on the tapes later on, when you're outlining, you're playing music the entire time, and then there's sections where you don't have any background noise at all. It sounds like you're trying to concentrate pretty hard. Is environment an issue at all when you're writing?
I think so. When you're writing, yes, I think so.
How does the music help when you're writing?
Don't ever use music. I really made a mistake, but it was fun.
Well, yeah, I think that it can throw you off. We did a lot of stuff in the third act where we played a piece of music that we thought was very resonant to their relationship. That was, a Beethoven,
Seventh
symphony. Yeah, and it really skewed. Yeah, with background music, the pages were great. Unfortunately, without the background music, they stunk and they were kind of, maudlin and overwrought. And then we had to back up and remember we were in a comedy.
Very breastfeeding.
Yeah, it was a little intense. And we had to kind of realize what the tone of the movie was that we were trying to do. And that tone isn't borrowed from ambience or a setting or another piece of music.
Or Ludwig.
Yeah, it has to come out of you.
Now let's go back to the archival material where we're going to hear how another major character was developed.
What are some of the changes that happen?
Well,
Situational changes.
Well,
that
he
happen.
starts getting into her. His libido starts getting a little awake, and he's like very nervous about it. And the point is coming when he's going to have to admit this to her. And she, at the same time, is starting to become a little bit like a kid. But maybe, and I don't know if we're playing this moment a little too early, maybe she's just getting into running around with him and doing the bunk bed number and going out the car. I mean, this guy is eccentric, and she loves it. Maybe one day they go out and do one of these things, and he's completely nervous. He has to admit to her that he's really just a kid. And that's the moment when she either seduces him or just sort of leads him into it.
Or would he take his first step into manhood by making it? Maybe this time she punches him in the arm. And she, turns to her
and kisses her awkwardly.
Yeah.
Really awkwardly.
Maybe that should be his first step into manhood.
Yeah, and he just can't believe it.
And he's like, the whole thing of him like walking into walls. Yeah.
Very uncomfortable.
Totally.
Awkward.
And then he realizes he's going to have to tell her because this is just leading to something. And he knows where it's kind of going. And he says, listen, I got to tell you something. And he goes, do you love me? And she goes, I love you. And he goes, why? And she goes, well, you're just like a kid.
I don't think he'd ask, do you love me? I think she would say, I love you. And he'd say, why?
She goes, you know what I love about you so much? You're just like a kid. That's what I love about you. Or something like that, you know? I got a great idea. It's one of these, like Mattel, but they're trying to go into computers. But the guy who founded it was a total kid himself and doesn't think that the future has room for kids or innocence. And Alex shows him that it does. He's this executive that shows him you can still be a kid with computers and computer games and new technology and video stuff.
That's a possibility. But I almost would like to see it go back a little bit, saying you can still be a kid with a train set. See, everybody is going to computers. I mean, let's play with this idea. I mean,
but Alex is a modern kid.
Yeah.
And there's something wonderful I love about the metaphor about preserving innocence in a modern age, that they can be compatible. There's something optimistic about it that's so interesting about saying that in the face of computers, in the face of this advancing onslaught and this new competition in the world being as advanced and cutthroat as it is, you have to have room for the child. So it'd be wonderful if Alex was able to fuse the two, was to have the same enthusiasm and boyish innocence that the head of the company did, but just with computers and high-tech stuff and things like that. And was able to make it work.
I like the idea that it's toy-oriented rather than just a business or computer business.
And the great thing is that every major corporation has computer data banks, and that's where he starts off working, is in their data bank.
Yeah.
He just moves
then
into the toy department.
Yeah,
exactly. Then he moves into the creative part of the company
because he's able to express, as a kid, what he'd like to get for Christmas. You know, I'd like to have a robot with this kind of computer that could do that. It's like,
that's not neat. Nobody's gonna want that. That's dumb. This is a great toy, and they're all like, you know, they all have business mind.
Yeah.
I mean, he has the mind of a kid, so he knows what toys are gonna work and what toys aren't.
Nobody's gonna play with it. Yeah.
Nobody's gonna play with that, and like he comes up with his own thing, and then you cut, you know, a little while later, they're going, the burger game is going through the roof. Get Alex Baskin in here. You know, Alex, my boy, the burger game has gone through the roof, and it's like it's his invention. You know. And he doesn't even understand the business import of it. He's just on to like a new idea.
Yeah. Here's your first check.
Yeah.
Here's your first. We just gave you a stock option in the company.
It's great.
And then the old guy taking him to FAO Schwartz. And he said, my boy, someday all this could be yours. He goes, oh God, thanks.
Okay, we're back with Gary and Ann. Gary, you were going to say something.
I believe you were asking about the relationship of Macmillan, I guess, to Macmillan and his inner child versus a guy who's a very successful corporate executive. And
maybe somewhat jaded at the point because of being so much caught up into the modern marketing, where marketing, as you say, is the key.
Yeah,
as
I
opposed
think
to
that's
what you're selling.
I think that's one of the things in it I'm probably the most proud of. I don't know if you feel the same way, is the tension between real innocence and experience.
Yes.
Versus losing your innocence it's normal to lose your innocence in the normal flow of life, but to sacrifice your innocence to a kind of a jaded corporate mercenary feeling, that's a high price to pay.
Yep.
And so I think that some of the satire in the movie of people behaving with all this avarice that are actually acting more childishly than Josh is,
yes,
is one of the things that's kind of one of the most interesting ideas in it. And Josh, in reclaiming this guy's innocence by getting him in touch with the toy company that he has founded and the reasons that he wanted to go into the toy business to begin with,
right,
ironically centers him as an adult. And
it's a toy.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of those things, I think that what Josh finds through the course of the movie is real maturity, and probably more maturity than a lot of the adults who are in a lot of denial around him. And those were some of the themes that we were playing with. And so I think that there's a tension between innocence and experience, but real experience properly earned that allows real growth. I mean, who grows up the most in the course of the movie? Right?
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's a lot of what Ann and I talked about. I don't know, how do you feel?
Right on.
I recall, didn't we speak about this kind of thing a lot too?
We did. Again, it was that what's below the surface that's going on all the time within these people, and who are they? Where are they going? What have they lost? Especially what have you lost, and how do you ever regain that loss?
Right.
The loss being what Tom loses.
That innocence, and it's not saying that growing up is a bad thing, but if you leave everything behind you while you're going, then I think it makes for not a happy
And I
process.
think we talked about,
we did.
This is my memory also, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we talk about the fact that this shouldn't just be a celebration of childhood, that it's about growing up in the right way and letting life happen in its proper flow?
In its own time, yes, in its proper flow.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun, too, because all the other supporting characters have that same, I guess, problem. Susan has left something behind.
A lot of lovers, too.
And then Macmillan, of course, has left that feeling of youth behind as he's gotten into this corporate role. And I don't know if John Hurd's
I think
character...
the only loser in the whole story, unfortunately, is Brad. Is it Brad?
Yes.
Yeah.
It becomes Paul.
There's no Paul. That's right. I kept going back and forth in his name, but he's one guy that doesn't find happiness.
Well, he's irredeemable.
He's irredeemable.
But he's funny, irredeemable.
Yeah.
And I think that, the idea that he's able to reclaim these people and that they can get past a lot of their own barriers and be more honest and true to themselves, and he's a catalyst for that out of his own enthusiasm and innocence, is one of the things we talked about. I mean, this wasn't like, it wasn't a happy accident.
No.
It was very, very conscious.
I know that Jim Brooks is a research nut, and I'm curious with certain elements of the story, like the toy company. Did you do a lot of research on toy companies to try to get an authentic feel to it?
Well, we went to the toy fair once or twice. We talked to a couple of toy executives and advertising executives, and then we spent a lot of time at F.A.O. Schwartz. We spent a lot of time on carnivals, roller coasters,
but it's not like we're doing a movie about
the selling of
or even like we're not doing a thing about fishermen on the Gulf Coast or oil wildcatters or the Revolutionary War. I mean, we're doing something that we can draw from. We've done a lot of research being children in our own lives, so it isn't that. We did some research, but it wasn't as if something like this is a more expressive kind of movie. Some are more research-based, and I think this came out of our experience.
Well, I think the research when we did do it was almost after the portions of the script had been written already. It was just more of, okay, we'll validate this. Yes, that does exist. It was the chicken or the egg, but I think in this case we were the chicken first.
Yeah.
But we didn't lay an egg.
So it was confirming a lot of what you were
It was confirming. It was more confirmation than an actual quest for product knowledge.
Okay, let's go back to the next section of archival material where we'll hear about some thunderstorms and the birth of Zoltar.
And then you cut to the inside of the house. Young man, you take the trash out. And that's like the first line of dialogue. Mom. And he's like watching something he's at his computer, like playing games on his computer. Young man, you leave that computer alone right now. And that's how we set it up, right? Yeah. Young man, you leave that computer alone right now and you take out the garbage,
Or you're not going to the carnival with Billy and so-and-so.
Great. Yeah.
This afternoon.
Yeah. And he's like, and he's typing stuff in the computer, and it's like flashing back on the screen.
Playing games, and he has bunk beds in his room.
Great. Yeah, great. This is perfect.
It's fear thunderstorms to be established when he's out in the street for the first couple of days. First time he's cowering in the doorway.
We got to get the sequence worked out, yeah, to a certain extent. Maybe not. We have most of it. We just get so much as we talk. The ending is great now.
Wonderful.
The ending is great. The carnival thing that with the machine helps so much. What should we call the genie? Zoran? Zarkon. Zarkon. Zarkon says your wish is granted.
Wonderkind.
No, I don't know. I like Zarkon. You know, like with lightning bolts.
Yeah.
And like the eyes, like flash, like they have lightning in them, you know? What I was thinking what was wonderful was that you do that, but that right after Zarkon grants the wish, you hear a thunderclap out at the beach.
And he jumps.
Yeah, and there's wind suddenly that goes rushing.
And
He goes, come on, Billy, it's raining. Yeah, come on,
and
Alex,
the
it's
parents-
raining.
Parents yells, Alex, kids, get in
Kids,
the car,
come in here.
we're
Come on, it's raining. Yeah, and that night, for some reason, he's just staring out the window at the storm.
He's
You know?
scared. He's cowering.
Yeah, he's scared. And you just show like a tree bending.
And he's
I
like-
mean, because it's God turning him into a grown-up.
Yeah.
We just heard about what will ultimately become Zoltar, and we were listening to different names you came up with. How important are names of characters in a script? Does it make a difference if somebody's called Josh or Paul or John or anything, or is it no big deal?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I
good.
really don't.
I don't either.
really don't, because it'll just eventually become the name of the person.
So
You got to
funny.
start something. It'll just eventually become the name of the person.
So
You got to
funny.
start someplace. Sometimes we go through a phone book and just point at a first name here. Here's a last name there. Sometimes we go through a phone book and just point at a first name here. Here's a last name there. Don't want to get too ethnic on any particular front. You actually just want to write it already and have this guy have a name.
Is there a point where you have a name for somebody and it's just like you're not able to get into the character because of the name, and you got to I got to get the right feel to this
No,
name?
but other people do.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I totally agree. I think it's just such a bunch of hooey. I do. I mean, unless it's inappropriate, you
Right.
know. I mean, if you give someone a foreign name who comes from Iowa, that'll be weird. But I mean,
Or that would be the story of the movie.
I agree with Ann. I mean, it's something that you get very used to very quickly, and it'll feel like it was always right.
I always find it's easier to find names for characters and hard to find names for dogs. I think that dogs are puppies. We would make lists, my husband and I, when we went up to buy our dog. Driving back from San Francisco back to L.A., I'd have the pad of paper, and he'd be driving it. What about this? What about that? I'd have the pad of paper, and he'd be driving it. What about this? What about that? We'd cross it off, and it took us. If we had kids, we would have been taking it to after they're born. We'd still be saying, what do we name him?
But if you name your kid Fluffy,
Yeah.
it's really a problem.
But Zoltar wouldn't be the same unless he was called Zoltar.
Well, that's how you feel now. But if we had called it, you know, Bantar.
Or Zoloft.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's something that we all would have gotten used to.
Guess you've got a point there. So now let's go back to our archival material.
You want to get sequence broad strokes?
Yeah. In fact, maybe that's what we should do tomorrow.
Let's do it now.
Is just, type that up, like a couple pages, so we have
We'll do it
1,
now.
2, 3, 4.
It's 3. Let's wait till 4:30.
Okay, let me see if I have any more
Quarter four.
tapes. Carnival
becomes a grown-up.
sneaks out of the house.
Sneaks out of the house.
Goes to Billy.
Goes to Billy.
What am I going to do?
What am I going to do? Can't go back. Billy says, well, the only thing we got to do is find the carnival. They go back. They can't find the carnival.
He goes home thinking that he'll just tell his mother that something happens.
And
there's
she
police
screams.
cars.
Yeah.
He screams and
And he
calls
goes,
the
I
police.
got to find him.
And he runs out of the house.
Billy says, don't worry. The only way you're going to get out of this thing, and this is sort of the premise of the movie, the only way you're going to get out of this thing is we got to find the carnival and, and track them down. You know?
But how am I going to live?
How am I gonna live
I
in
have
this-
$4.
Yeah.
He
goes, well, we'll get you a job. And he goes, I can't go back. Just tell him I can't, Billy. I can't. They won't want
I'll
me.
be a freak.
And he goes, well, you'll get a job. You'll get a job in the meantime. We'll find you something, And they go to an employment agency.
And fill the application.
Yeah. We'll get you a job. Oh, no, but why would he go to a toy company? No, data operator. There's
At a toy company.
At a toy company,
It's
yeah.
available.
Right. And so he goes there, and then he gets that job. And then while he's on the job for a while, he revamps the database of the company. But the
Then we have
next
to
plot
cut
move is
to
how he
this
gets
woman.
the attention of the creative affairs people. He has to come up with an idea for a toy. So I'd really love it if he just went up to the president of the company or something and showed him this great idea that he had for a new toy or for how to improve an existing toy or what they ought to do.
Maybe the president is coming down to talk to this other guy at his station. They're not separate rooms. They're all like separate cubicles
Yeah.
on this main floor. And
Right.
he hears them, and he goes, ooh, from behind him.
Yeah. or something where he just comes up with like a great idea for a new toy.
It wouldn't be in his character to go to the boss to try to get a toy made. His advancement has got to be
slow,
happen
inadvertent.
To him.
Yes, you're right.
You're right. You're right. Take care of it himself.
Right. Well, he comes up with a great idea for a toy somehow. Becomes the attention of the boss. We just have to find a good way for a good toy to come to the attention of the boss. Maybe he meets the girl, the woman, and she wonders who he is, but she's involved in something, maybe at lunch, maybe something non-businessy, and he offers her a bunch of ideas. And she presents them to the boss, and the boss loves them, and she knows talent when she sees it, and this guy's kind of a meal ticket. You know?
How would he offer her ideas? Doing what? Does she brown bag it and they sit together that afternoon or something?
Maybe something like that. Or maybe they bump into one another someplace within the company.
Or outside of the company.
Yeah, and she starts talking about
maybe at
ideas
the toy store.
She's checking out product.
Yeah,
and he's just looking at toys.
Find them. Yeah.
Right. He's just looking at toys.
You're working on Saturday too, huh?
Well, he's got money for the first time.
Yeah.
So maybe he is buying some.
Yeah, he's buying a toy.
Yeah. Yeah, and she goes, "You're working on Saturday." I didn't know. I thought you were in data. Oh no, I just like toys.
Yeah.
Right. And he starts telling her.
Says, "Why are you buying this one?"
And she thinks that he's up to something, and he just says stuff that he thinks would be kind of, cool. You know, maybe it'd be better though if he could come to the attention of the boss and not to her. Because why would she then? See, the whole motivation is she wants to sleep with him to get in good because she thinks he's like a rising star in the company.
Yeah, what does she want to be?
President. She wants to move up the ladder. And she's always trying to schmooze the boss, and she's like sleeping with and being coquettish to the other guy who's kind of her, maybe her just immediate superior and playing both sides off against, whatever.
So maybe the boss is out looking at toys.
Yeah.
And he runs into that.
And there are two kids looking at toys.
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, that's great." And the boss says, "Haven't I seen you?"
You work for me.
Yeah, you work for me. Yeah, and he knows, and they just play with toys together, and he gives them a jillion ideas about toys.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, I'm transferring you to creative.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's it. Right. I'm transferring you to creative.
And that's how she meets him.
And that's how she. And suddenly, there's a new creative vice president.
Yeah, and everybody's an uproar like, who is this guy they bring him in?
Treacherous. He's a killer. He's a
not
cutthroat.
yet,
but he's just ingenuous. And the reason is because they were both kids together. Him and the boss were playing with toys on a Sunday at FAO Schwartz. That's great.
Oh, that'd be a great scene too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Now, do you guys remember seeing the film for the first time with an audience? And where was it? What was the reaction? What was your feeling?
Well, the first time it was with an audience was at the premiere and party at Fox at the studio. And I personally was in there for only half of it, and then I was just very nervous, very nervous. It was just so strange to see it be alive with people watching it that I had to leave. And I paced up and down in the lounge until I think Barry Diller was pacing up and down in the lounge too.
Wow.
Yeah. And then after that, Gary and I rented a limo on opening day, and we went just from movie theater to movie theater in all these different towns.
Now, this is the first produced screenplay for both of you, yes?
Yes.
And so the experience of it's actually real, it's being made. Can you describe, start with Gary, can you describe what that feels like?
Well, I think two things. It was a huge, steep learning curve. I mean, Anne had actually been a producer, and so she'd been on more movie sets than me. And I had directed a lot of theater, but I'd never been on a movie set. So the first thing was it was an interesting, exhilarating thing to actually be around a movie being made. I think we always felt it would get made. And like anything in life, when it finally happens to you, you're actually ready for it. It doesn't feel like a surprise. You've worked very hard to get there. And we were thrilled to be, a part of a company. We were excited to be there every day. We preserved our relationship as partners really, really well through the process and stayed supportive on the set with each other.
Which is very important.
And hard to do. And we were able to do that. We always spoke with one voice, which when you're two people on a set, can be tough. But it was
Sometimes it frustrated them. You know,
Yeah.
like, what do you mean you're going to wait for Gary to get here before you tell me what you're thinking? Because we do it together.
Yeah,
That's why.
but yeah, exactly. I think to have a movie made in this movie that felt special and with this casting that was really right was very, very exciting.
Exceptional experience to have your very first movie become such a classic and a success.
Yeah, it was.
It's special. It's very special.
Yeah, and then I think in seeing the movie and the release and all of that was probably a little more surprising. The success of it was a very new experience. The work you're prepared for because you're really you've lived the movie in your head, and so you know what you think each moment should be, and you're very engaged in the process. I'd never imagined what it would mean to have something out there in the public consciousness that everybody was seeing.
Yeah, they're eating popcorn and they're laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was that's a different kind of feeling, and that's sort of when you take a deep breath and just enjoy it.
Yes, you have to, because it doesn't get easy after that. It actually gets harder.
Yeah.
Actually gets harder.
And it's got to be interesting to when your lines become part of the popular vernacular, like the "I don't get it" line that Tom has in the toy meeting. Everyone, who's watched this film remembers that line. They'll say it. In fact, we did a piece at Mattel, real life toy company, and the folks at Mattel said, "Oh yeah, in meetings all the time, I'll raise my hand and say, I don't get it."
It's very gratifying. I mean, I think it was
I never thought I'd be reviewed in Newsweek. Come on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I live in a one-room apartment. What's going on here?
It was really a lot of fun.
So now let's go back to our archival material.
And the guy, he's treacherous, he's a cutthroat. She goes, I think he's kind of intelligent. He's like starting to get to it. Yeah. Intelligent, you're taken in by that goody two-shoes 8-year-old routine. This man is a killer, She's like totally cutthroat,
Charles Grodin.
Great, perfect.
Because he's really obsequious to the boss.
Perfect. Perfect.
Really
Perfect.
obsequious.
Oh, it's perfect.
And then he's out there and says, I hate him, I'm gonna kill him. You're gonna do something to him.
Oh, it's perfect. Perfect. It's a great idea.
And he sends her to steal whatever ideas, milk his brain, do whatever you have to, bring them back to
Find out.
me.
Well, there's one
Find
toy
out
that
what
he's
they're
working
up to.
on. The guy has him working on a toy, and he has her try to steal the idea for the toy.
Yeah.
And that's when she sleeps with him for the first time, only she can't do it.
Because they're not sleeping together. Because
They're
that's
not.
When
That's when it happens. She starts to fall in love, and she can't do it. She can't do it. That's great.
First
And
night,
he's
yeah.
the
How
total
old is he? 8?
40. Oh. Yeah.
Age of 40.
No.
11?
11.
Sixth
10.
grade?
10 or 11.
10.
6th grade. 6th grade.
6th grade would be 11 or 12.
Because you're just coming into puberty,
Yeah.
and that's what has to happen. He comes into puberty during the movie when he's 40.
Yeah. God, an adolescent. Billy is going to be great.
Oh. Also, the relationship between them.
Billy and Alex.
It's going to be tremendous. It's going to be tremendous.
Now, the other boy shouldn't be named Alex. That's a little too classy for the other guy.
Max. I love Max.
Max?
It's a sharp name.
Yeah. Max.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little too grown up.
Yeah.
Freddie. Billy and Freddie.
Alfie.
Alfie Singer. It's from
Woody Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bert. Fred. Tommy.
Billy, Tommy. No. Mikey.
Mike.
Mike.
Just Mike.
Mike.
Mikey's a kid.
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah.
Come on, Mike. Mike, it's me, Billy. Yeah, it works.
You know what's wonderful about this? It's all situational. There's no effort.
Yeah.
There's just no effort. It just happens because it's all there.
That's the most fun to write.
The premise,
Effort.
yeah,
I hate
it's just
effort.
no effort.
I hate any
But
effort.
there's just no effort in this.
It's just good old spun sugar.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Spun sugar, exactly. It's just there. You know.
So, Gary, when you and Ann were writing this, were you thinking of a child audience or were you thinking of more of an adult audience?
Well, it's funny because I think it's a movie that plays, hopefully, to adults as well as kids, and maybe for different reasons. I think there's some social satire in it that probably plays to adults in terms of having lost the kid in them. And then I think children can access the story from the point of view of their aspirations to grow up. I mean, every kid wants to grow up and has a yearning to grow up. So what's strange is that I think the movie does work on both levels. Maybe that's because Ann and I are both very immature.
We are
or we access something
childlike.
we access something that was more universal. I don't know. But it's funny because we were doing a research trip. We were back in New York. We went down to the toy building at the bottom of Fifth Avenue, and we were meeting with a very esteemed toy executive, a guy who's kind of a legend in the business. We were riding in his car uptown, and he said to us, so tell me, is this for kids or is this for grown-ups? Who's your market? And Ann and I
we said both.
Yeah,
it's kids and grown-ups.
Yeah, it's for both of it. And he goes, tell me, is this for kids or is this for grown-ups? Who's your market? And Ann and I
we said both.
Yeah,
it's kids and grown-ups.
Yeah, it's for both of it. And he goes, no, it can't be for both. It's got to be for kids or it's got to be for grown-ups. And we looked at each other like, because we hadn't made the movie yet. We hadn't made any movie yet. We kind of looked at each other like, oh God, I hope we didn't screw this up, because he was telling us that what we were trying to do was impossible.
Work. Right.
And I think that sometimes especially when it's about being a kid or being a grown-up, you can look at it from two different perspectives, and the same truth is resonant from two different directions and means two different things.
Yes.
And I think that that's one of the things we got very lucky, about in this movie, was that the yearnings of a child to be an adult and the yearnings of an adult to go back to childhood are very strong
and very basic
and overlap, and they give you really two movies depending on your perspective.
And did you ever consider, as you were writing this whole thing, that maybe we could write a second movie from the adult going back to being a kid? Was that ever a thought, or was it always, hey, this is?
No, it's always an adult. I mean, a kid wishing that he was a grown up, because every kid does.
Yeah, adults frequently act like children and act those out in a variety of ways.
But kids like to try to be. They think they want to be through with it. They think that they're 12 years old and they can't do what they want to do yet. And they think that, if I'm 18, I could do this. I mean, I would like to think that they're thinking when I'm 18, I can vote, but that's not always the case. But they want to be bigger and they want to happen fast. They're just feel constrained.
And what a thing to want to get over with,
Yes, because that, when you realize what you miss, I'm not saying this as a, self-biography, but
yeah,
you would miss a lot if you couldn't go through it.
And I think we always were aware of that, in the process. Ann and I tend to write movies that cannot be sequelized. And, normally when there's a big hit, everybody yearns for a sequel. But of course, this is just such a self-contained fable. What sequel could there be? We always imagined that if there was ever a sequel, that it would just be another Zoltar wish of some kind. That the sequel to this was a whole new cast of characters with a very similar kind of fundamental yearning that had attendant consequences to it. But it would be very hard to take this particular plot and find a sequel to it.
No, I think the only sequel or some kind of sequel that they ever thought of was, what if Susan makes a wish to be 12? And suddenly she's back at Josh's school saying, here I am, honey.
Now, did you ever consider using that as the ending for the movie?
No.
Other people did.
Yeah. The movie
Other people suggested
the movie
it.
ended. It was such a natural progression. I don't think it could have gone any other way.
But it was very funny. There was a TV series that was developed around this. Every time there's a hit, they want to do a TV show, or if there was a pretty bad musical that was done on Broadway. But Ann and I always said this is a really bad idea for a TV show, because it's one thing to have a self-contained fable where he journeys home. It's another thing to trap a kid in a grown-up body for 5 years of a TV show in purgatory while he's dating this woman and somehow lets childhood slip away. Yeah, it was really unseemly to us.
You'd have to be guaranteed 6 years, with renewals down the line, 13 episodes, 26 episode guarantee every year until 30.
So how old is he really after 3 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
then he's just completely confused and traumatized. So
It's a confusing and traumatizing premise in itself if you really get down to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we warned him. I mean, we
Yeah.
said this is really going to be a bad TV show, which they found out when they shot the pilot, but it was.
There's such a desire at the end of the movie as an audience member, when you're watching it, you want the two of them to be together. And there is a desire to have her either get younger and be with him, or him somehow stay. But maybe that's part of what makes it
An
resonant.
unrequited desire is sometimes a nice thing in a movie. In other words,
That's the fortune cookie says that.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Stay, but maybe that's part of what makes it
An
resonant.
unrequited desire is sometimes a nice thing in a movie. In other words,
That's the fortune cookie says that.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Stay, but maybe that's part of what makes it
An
resonant.
unrequited desire is sometimes a nice thing in a movie. In other words,
That's the fortune cookie says that.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Casablanca, right?
Yeah.
You may think you want her on that or him on that plane with her, but do you really?
You wouldn't have Casablanca.
Exactly.
You wouldn't have had Beeg.
Exactly. I mean, it would be a momentarily more satisfying, but an ultimately less satisfying.
Yes. Yes.
Now let's go back to some more archival material.
But the thing we have to remember first is the carnival opening.
Okay.
House of Mirrors, fortune-telling machine.
But before that, he says, "I wish I was a grown-up." And then he goes to the carnival with his friends, and
he can't get on this
he
ride.
can't get on a ride because he's not tall enough. And then he goes into the thing and he imagines himself tall in one of these mirrors. And then after that, in the same funhouse, he goes to this fortune-telling machine, which is one of those statues that has red glowing eyes.
Yeah.
And it's not quite real, and it's not quite not. It's in that strange netherworld between being a real machine and not. And if you're able to do something in the machine, you get a wish.
Yeah.
And he really works hard, and he gets it, and he's able to drop something in another slot, and it lights up, "Make a wish."
Yeah.
And he goes, "I wish I was a grown-up." And then it blinks. They go, "Come on, Billy, we gotta go." And the next thing,
No, I wish I was grown up.
"I wish I was grown up."
Because remember the implications. Because the wish has got to see that he's kept his 11-year-old mind.
Right.
His body just got bigger.
Right.
Defective wish.
Right. Right. He didn't phrase it right. Because I wish I was grown up. And then the next thing you know, he's at
He's home. It's the next
he's home.
morning.
It's the next morning, and you
His
just do a
feet are
pan shot,
sticking out of the end of his bed.
and you hear, "Billy, breakfast is ready."
Okay, Mom.
Yeah. Okay, Mom. Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah, and then he gets up and he goes into the bathroom.
And you know what you do, and you hear like a grumble, and then you just hear from downstairs, "Young man, you're going to miss the carpool if you don't get up."
The bus, you're going to miss the bus.
And we freeze on just a head on the pillow, and it turns, and it's either Bill Murray or Dan Aykroyd or
No,
whoever
not
it
yet.
is.
I think,
That
and it,
joke.
he starts to reach for the doorknob, and it's like somebody moved the doorknob, and then somebody moved the mirror,
Right.
and then it's looking down and, oh my God, somebody broke it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right. But we can still do. We're talking about a shot. We can still do that if we show his face in bed. You can still do all that humor and you think it's better if we haven't seen his face
Yeah,
yet?
I'd like to have the reveal,
Okay.
happen as he discovers it.
Right. And then he's faced with the prospect of, holy shit, the wish.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what it should do? Oh, this is great. It should say something like Zardoz or Zardoc or Zorak. It should say something like Zorak. And after he makes the wish, a card comes out that says, Zorak says your wish is granted.
Zorak says, okay.
Yeah.
Zorak says, why not?
Yeah. Or something like really fun. Like Zorak says wish is granted, and like he looks at it and he doesn't know how it got big, and he looks down at the card the next morning and it says Zorak says your wish is granted. And he goes, oh my God.
And his mother screams, Billy, the bus is here, and she just hears a door slam. Then she yells, have a nice day. She doesn't realize he's running down the street.
And then he has to go back to go to the carnival, but when he goes there, it's broken down, and it should be almost like like a seaside carnival that they put up on a vacant lot, so the ocean's there, so that when he goes, all he sees are waves.
Yes, and a couple of old posts that have fallen
that are
over,
still there, and like
brush.
the remnants, a string of lights that are broken maybe, and it's just
Cotton
gone.
candy on the ground.
And he just hears wind.
Yeah.
And he's this grown man, and he just hears wind. Now, why wouldn't he want to go back to his parents at this point?
Maybe he does. Maybe he goes back.
He does.
Maybe he goes home.
Why wouldn't he want to go back to his parents at this point?
Maybe he does. Maybe he goes back.
He does.
Maybe he goes home, and his mother thinks it's a house break. I mean, finds this adult in the room and starts shrieking, and like he runs away.
You took my kid. Who took my child? You take my child. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's just like completely, or his mother just doesn't recognize him and he's terrified. So then he goes to a soup kitchen, somebody tries to roll him for his money, or they try to take advantage of him, and he's terrified in a world of adults. So he goes to Billy like, what do? I can't go home. They're going to kill me. They're looking for me. What can they do? Whatever it is, we find a good reason why he explains to Billy that he can't go home until he gets it figured out.
Yeah.
Because how am I going to live? Because I can't do that
Billy
to
says,
them.
I have $4.
Yeah, right.
I have $4.
He goes, well, now you can get a job. Because he's so good with computers.
What about school?
It's perfect. He doesn't have to go to school. It's like sanctioned hooky.
So does he move to New York?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Great.
Then
He
how's
goes to
Billy
New York
come
City.
in to see him? Unless he just right across the river. I mean, really it's New Jersey on the New York end,
Right.
rather than the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania end.
Right.
So it's northern Jersey.
Yeah. And the great shot the moment when he decides he's not going to go back home for whatever reason, we have to come up with a good one. It's great to just, he decides he's not going to go home, and you cut to a shot of the Manhattan skyline. I mean, the audience is going to go nuts.
Yeah.
You just cut to the shot of New York City, and you have him on the train, going into New York with Billy, who's giving him advice. Like an 8-year-old kid giving this
Billy is
advice.
like hip.
Billy is, that's it. You got to make Billy an operator.
Yeah.
Billy knows just what to do. He tells him, don't you worry, we're going to get you a job.
They're in the store together. They're walking through a store, and Billy's like taking gum and sticking it inside of his shirt. Billy would do a little shoplifting.
How about Billy does this? How about this is the excuse, okay? He says, listen, we're not going to get this fixed out till we track down this carnival and we find out what's going on and who these people are, and then we can do this thing. But in the meantime, you got to eat. So what you got to do is get a job. Well, what are you good at? You're great at computers. So in the meantime, while we're tracking this down, I'm sure this will be fine in a few weeks. And Billy says, don't you worry about it. We'll track this down. But in the meantime, we'll just take you in here and we'll show them that you're like a genius at computers, He gets in data processing and he finds a way to revamp their data processing like in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
He just shows them that he can run the whole computer. I mean, that's really what it is. Can you run the computer like this?
Yeah, how does he talk to the guy? What's his tone?
He just gets all excited. He just sits down and just starts going, oh, this is a G3 2400. I never seen one of these before. And he just starts, and the guy just sees like he totally knows this computer, And he goes, do you know you can bypass the module and and he just like starts feeling it. And he goes, you're hired. Because you got a job. Boom, you got a job.
Quickly.
Yeah, because he just gets all thrilled with this computer. Oh, this is great.
First he's in the waiting room, personnel office waiting room, with all these other people sitting there, and they're all picking up New Yorker magazines, Newsweek, Time, and he's looking at something like...
he's reading a comic book of his own, Yeah, that's great. Like he's reading like a comic book.
The scan.
Yeah, that he bought. Right. And he's like reading a Spider-Man comic book,
What about filling out the employment application? Home address? Well, he doesn't want to put his parents' address down. Years of education? 1st through 8th, 12th through... I mean, just like...
Oh, yeah. Oh, something like...
He takes it back to Billy.
Yeah,
He goes back
you know what
to
they are?
Billy.
They're sitting someplace. Where would kids go to eat? Like have a soubrette, or a soda fountain.
A soda fountain, or they would grab a hot dog on the street and go sit on the wall.
Maybe the two of them are having a banana split, 2 banana splits somewhere, filling out his employment application, and he's going, years of education, 8 years of higher education, education, 5. 5's good,
Yeah.
Oh, maybe he's from Princeton, New Jersey.
So he puts down Princeton.
Princeton? Yeah, where?
Yeah.
Where? Princeton. Yeah. Great.
Where'd you go to school? Princeton. Where's Princeton Elementary?
Yeah, right. We're missing that part where he becomes part of the toy company and starts to rise, and he has new projects, and
and the nemesis, the Charles Grodin character, sends the woman to infiltrate, and she starts getting bemused by him, and where he starts rising, that little being there, how to succeed part, where he starts to become like stronger.
Oh, it'd be a dinner party that the boss is giving.
Great, that's great.
Maybe that's when she says, "Can I give you a lift home? I have the car." Limbo.
And also the whole part, or maybe it's a big company party, lavish for all the executives at some fancy restaurant, and like just him as a misfit in
With
that
the
situation.
buffet. Since I took the olives all daylight savings, like he's spitting the olives.
And also
bits
the
out.
kids don't like food that other people like.
Yeah. Clams on the half shell. And
Yeah.
Fish eggs. Caviar.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Lox.
gross. Maybe he spits
Herring.
out a mouthful of caviar. Just spits it out, and like the whole table stops.
But then he's got to try to.
But it'd be great also if he'd go, no, not just gonna go, and then take a sip of water, and like try to get the taste out of his mouth.
He grabs it.
Yeah.
Clear, look at it.
Yeah. And he spits that out again. Everybody's just staring at him. He goes, ew, gross, fish eggs. And like the head of the company loves it.
We just heard how the whole corn-eating pate scene came about. What's the story of how the whole mini corn thing happened? Was that something that came on the set? Was that part of the original script? Do you guys remember?
Yeah, the corn was on the set. Tom needed to get from the stairway to the caviar, and he was going through the line of the table with all the food on it. So we didn't know what he was going to do. It just start here, end here with the caviar line. And he started eating with the carrot first and dipping it, and then suddenly we see him with this piece of corn in his hand, this little mini corn. And we were like dying. Everybody there was just, we're laughing, trying not to make a noise. I don't think we even took a second take of it. Yes, we did.
It was
but
pretty
it was
brilliant.
just brilliant.
Well, he's in character, and he finds
Yeah.
he's a child, and he finds a little piece of corn, and it's one of those sublime comic moments. This is why you're lucky to have someone like Tom.
Yes.
That he's able to transform that into an inspired comic moment in real time while you're rolling.
That was my niece's favorite part. She started eating corn. She started having my sister buy her little mini corns, and she just,
Like some of those moments you talked about earlier that when you write it on the page that this is going to be, a scene that is going to hit. When it was part of the script, was it more of a transitionary moment? Did you realize it was
No, I mean, it's all scripted at a buffet. The caviar part is scripted, but, each part of the process has its own dynamic life. And Tom gets there, and he sees all this stuff in front of him, and he finds the corn, and he invents this piece of business. Any good actor feels like they're in the process of invention.
and should be.
Yes, of course. And Tom's brilliant. And so he found a prop, he used it, and he was able to make a wonderful comedic moment out of it.
That's one of the high points, too. I think.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
one of the funniest points.
It's great. It seemed that there was a great marriage between Tom and the script, that he really related to it. In a lot of ways, he was able to bring this kid to life in a way that I would imagine you guys hoped an actor would. Do you remember seeing his first dailies or performances? When did you first see Tom in the role?
Well, we saw him there on the first day of shooting. We saw Tom, and he came in about a week after we did young Josh first. And the first day that we were on the set with Tom and we were watching him do the shot, it was like, you just know this marriage is good, really good.
So there's a feeling there of this guy, he's going to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, it was very obvious. I mean, I think it was obvious to us before we started, but there's always a feeling, right? When you see someone on the first day inhabit this, and both relief and excitement and all those things.
The excitement, too, of actually somebody is becoming the character that, a year ago was not even a figment of the imagination.
Totally.
It's like,
And the other thing that's important to remember is that this is a situation in which on the page it reads like a 12-year-old.
yes.
So the first time you see a grown-up doing these things, the movie really comes to life because it's written, the dialogue's written like it's 12, and yet suddenly this is coming out of a 30-year-old body.
Seeing Tom see himself in the mirror in the bathroom was like seeing Tom, for me, the first time. of, oh my God, he is Josh.
Yeah.
This is Josh. He made a wish, he grew up, and look what happened. He turned into Tom Hanks.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
And it's a great way to introduce Tom's character. I think it's really effective. So now let's go to the final segment of the archival material and listen to the ending of the movie.
I think I figured out what the machine should look like. It says, it's like a machine where you put your quarter in the top and there are two levers and you hold onto the levers. And as soon as you put your quarter in, it rolls to the top of a ramp. And a light goes on and it says, make wish. And he goes, I wish I was a grown-up. And at that point, he pushes the button and the quarter rolls down a ramp. And if you aim it correctly, it goes into Zoltar's mouth. And Zoltar closes his mouth and his eyes light up red. And a little card comes to him and it punches out that says, your wish is granted.
And then a thunder starts.
And then at that point, there's a thunderclap.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. I know I shouldn't call myself brilliant, but I mean, I think it's a good idea.
And meanwhile, Billy's trying to track down the carnival.
It's so great they're trying to track down the carnival. You know what? He gets a choice at the end. The carnival comes back, and that's when he gets to choose whether to go back or not. You know? And, like, maybe you can have a whole climax where he's racing to the carnival, and she's going there to try to stop him or try to get him. And he goes, what do you... And he's, like, fumbling, trying to get the thing in the slot.
And she's going to say, don't do it.
Yeah. Wish is granted. And then he just looks at her like saying goodbye, like wish is granted.
Yeah. And then the next day that he walks up to the school, and as he walks in, he starts shrinking.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody turns around. And says,
yeah, and she goes, well, is it going to happen now? He goes, no, it takes a few hours. He goes, we still have a couple of hours. Oh,
my God.
Oh, God.
Oh, my heart.
Oh, God. It's like someone who's going to die, but they're not going to die. They're just going to become a kid. We still have a couple of hours.
And
well, it's almost time.
Let me off here.
Just let me off. Oh.
He gets out of the car, and she's
and just
sitting
says,
in the
I
car.
love you. And they just,
Yeah. And then he turns and walks, and they just go wide, you know.
Yeah.
Long shot. He's walking,
and he just gets smaller, and the clothes get all baggy.
Yeah.
And she just watches him with tears in her eyes, and that should be the end of the movie.
That's it.
That's the end of the movie. Yeah. No, you know what the end of the movie is?
The front walk.
You know what the end of the movie is? You think that's the end of the movie? Then you cut back to her, and she kind of had tears in her eyes, but a slight smile. She gets back in her car, and there's some little game that he was fiddling with through the whole thing that she starts to play because she's still a little bit of a kid.
I know what it is.
What is it?
She goes back to the carnival herself.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Should be something that she does that's childish.
Yeah, maybe that thing that his wish is granted is in the car.
Is there some kind of game she could have that she starts to play because she's still a little bit of a kid?
I know what it is.
What is it?
She goes back to the carnival herself.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Should be something that she does that's childish.
Yeah, maybe that thing that his wish is granted is in the car.
Is there some kind of game she could have that she plays that's stupid that kids play? Like trying to get a thing in a cup that's just dumb?
Mm-hmm.
It's like...
She picks up a flashlight and...
It doesn't have to be a game. Something a kid does is totally childish that she should do that just preserves the kid in her. We can find it later.
Is watching the movie today, almost 20 years down the line, any different from when you first saw it in 1988?
I'm looking at it now through another generation of children seeing it for the first time, and that's really interesting. You know, the parents of 13-year-olds now are saying, my son just watched your movie for the first time.
As far as the listening to the audio tapes, any reactions to listening to yourself brainstorm this thing 20 years ago?
The thing that hits me is how excited we were to have this idea and how much enthusiasm for it we had, and that we were enjoying working together, and that we were very supportive of each other.
I think the nostalgia sometimes is just amazing. You remember every sort of sense that you were having when you listened to something 20 years later, almost what you smelled in the air at the time. It's this real reawakening of, I feel really sort of like, it's not bittersweet, but it's, you know what I mean? It's just sort of, is this thing in the soul.
And as a writer then, I think there's things that you look back on in yourself that you've grown out of. Mm-hmm. And there's other things you look back on in yourself that you miss.
Yes.
Like not knowing, like an innocence, like a certain enthusiasm for the process that's fresh and new. And that's kind of cool. I mean, I think the coolest thing is that you and I have stayed such good
20
friends
years later.
over all this. Yeah. And really, when you look back on it, you and I can get in a room now and pitch an idea.
And we still have that same,
and it's just as much fun as it was then. And I think if you were going to ask us then, and in whatever 18 years, are you and Gary going to get together in a room, and is this still going to be going on?
Yeah.
It's kind of that's one of the coolest things.
I'm glad it happened. I'm really glad it happened. It was one of the best experiences in ways now looking back that I can see
Me
that
too.
I did not appreciate maybe at the time. It was one of the best experiences I've had.
No, I had a ball too. I had a ball. It's wonderful to pause and look back on it and hear us then. And, I hope people enjoyed as much as we did.
This has been really neat. This has been a lot of fun doing this, and thanks.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot too. It was a lot. It's a lot of fun looking back on something that you did a long time ago and actually having a chance to reflect. You don't get a chance to do that often. So thank you. It was a lot of fun.